Popular culture loves a bad boss. We pin a workplace hero, Dilbert, to our cubicle walls, share memes of Michael Scott from The Office, and cheer while watching the $209.6 million box office smash Terrible Bosses. We've even elected reality TV star Executive Chef and his bad boss catchphrase, "You're fired," into the White House. But do we love these bosses in real life? Well, not really much, and definitely not here at Moving Forward Leadership. Bad boss behavior stems from all too common leadership tendencies we carry within us: hubris, arrogance, and proclivity to abuse power. Let them go unchecked for too long, and your reign as a leader is toast. In a world where leadership seems to be about who's the loudest and who's the most outlandish, we're all one step away from being that leader gone wild. Today, my guest, Captain John Coach Havlik, former U.S. Navy SEAL, and I discuss topics such as why he joined the U.S. Navy, in particular the SEALs, his greatest leadership lessons from his time as a SEAL, why humility is so important to leaders, amongst many more other topics. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Moving Forward Leadership Podcast, episode 108, The Leadership Killer, with U.S. Navy SEAL retired John Havlik. Welcome all to the Moving Forward Leadership Podcast. It's your Chief Leadership Officer, Scott McCarthy, and it's so great to have you here to help you develop your skills in one of three, if not all three, domains of leadership, and that is leading yourself, leading your team, and leading your organization. And today we got a great show because we're going to be talking all about leading yourself and a bit about leading your team as well, with a superstar guest, retired U.S. Navy SEAL John Havlik, who went up to the ranks of captain. Now, if you're not familiar with military ranks, captain is one rank below into what we call flag ranks, or in the Navy terms, becoming an admiral. So John went really far in his career as being a SEAL. And what you're going to hear about it from him is that it wasn't all roses and flowers and great times. No, he had some serious difficulties in his career, and it's some great lessons that are going to be taken out of it. So this is the type of guests that we get here at Moving Forward Leadership to help you develop your skills, in case you haven't realized it. If this is your 108th time listening, or if this is your first time listening, this is what we bring to you week in, week out at Moving Forward Leadership. So guys, I've already pretty much introduced my guest. I don't think he needs much more introduction. Former U.S. Navy SEAL, captain retired from the Navy, John Havlik, and we're going to be talking about his book, The Leadership Killer, which is essentially revolving around how your ego and your arrogance is going to kill you as a leader. All right, so sit back, relax, and enjoy my conversation all about The Leadership Killer with my guest, Captain Retired John Havlik. John, welcome to the Moving Forward Leadership Podcast. It's so great to have you here.
Scott, thanks for the interview. Look forward to dazzling you with my brilliance and a little bit about the book and my background, and share it with your listeners.
Wow, that goes a little bit against the whole premise of the book and being a humble leader, don't you think?
Well, I mean, at least in the military, I learned to be brief and brilliant. So I carried that mantra with me throughout, and it worked pretty good. So I will try to dazzle you with, make it worthwhile for the listen. How's that?
That sounds great. Just joking around. I love having former / military regardless guests here, because I get to talk a little bit of the same lingo as what I live on a daily basis. And I'm sorry to tell you, but you're not the first Navy SEAL on the Moving Forward Leadership Podcast. You're number 2. Mark Devine beat you out. I've had Mark on the show before. Another great guy.
Mark.
You know Mark?
I know Mark very well.
Who's actually, as a little challenge to do, Mark still owns the top downloaded podcast episode from Moving Forward Leadership. So let's see if you can knock him down. A little interstitial rivalry going on.
He's a better looking guy than I am. So.
So before we dive into your book, I want to talk a little bit about your military life, because it would be wrong for me as the host here to not get a little bit of that insights from your life that you had for the listener. So the first thing is, why join the U.S. Navy, and in particular, why go to the SEALs as an officer to lead Special Forces members?
Well, the quick answer is I grew up an Army brat and followed my dad around. When I never thought I'd make the military a career, but it just so happened that I got the opportunity to coach at the United States Naval Academy when I first got out of college, because I thought that was my career choice, to be a swim coach. And so the opportunity opened up, but it came with a catch, and the catch was I had to join the Navy. I had to enlist, go to boot camp, go through the 9 weeks there. And then I had guaranteed orders from boot camp to the academy. And so, it was a great opportunity for me. And I'm from that area, so I was excited to go back. And so about a year into the coaching assignment, some guy came, good-looking, handsome guy comes walking down the pool deck. And I looked at the head coach and I said, "Who is this guy?" And he said, "Oh, this is Lieutenant so-and-so. He just checked on board." And I said, "Well, what does he do?" And he said, "Well, he's a Navy SEAL." And I said, "Well, what's a Navy SEAL?" And, my coach, the head coach goes, "Oh, it's like the Special Forces in the Navy." I said, "Interesting." So, one thing led to another. My friend and I, he became a great friend, and we worked out together. He kind of told me a little bit about what was going on. And so I was starting to relook the coaching, whether that was really going to put a lot of food on the table, so to speak. And so I said, well, why not? Let's go for it. And so I tried out. I put in a package when I was at the academy to go to officer candidate school to get my commission first, and then with a guarantee to go to SEAL training afterwards. So the folks at the academy were great and support. And they sponsored me and helped me get in there. And so I got in. And really why I wanted to be an officer was I figured if I was going to do the SEAL thing, I wanted to have a say in the end state, so to speak. So I wanted to be in charge also. And I'm figuring, well, I'm coaching these future officers. I'm just as good as these guys. So why not go for it? So that's why I did the commissioning route. And it all worked out. And that's how it led me into the SEALs. A couple of months after I got my commission, I started SEAL training.
That's pretty funny. There's so many people whose stories are very similar. Like, didn't plan on going it this way, but it kind of just randomly ended up this way, and it went with the flow. So, and I'm kind of similar in that regard as well.
Very unique opportunity opened up, and SEALs at the Naval Academy are like gods there. So, when I told everybody I was going to do it, most of them said, "Well, you're not going to make it because the attrition rate is so high." And that kind of fed me to prove them all wrong. But I was glad I did it. Great opportunity. I took advantage of it, and glad I did it.
Now, you were in the SEALs. You did 31 years, 4 months, as we discussed before we hit record, in the Navy, total time. You retired at the rank of captain, from what I read in your bio, which is very senior rank, one below hitting the flag officers of admiral. So with all that experience, what are some of the greatest leadership lessons you took from those times?
The best leaders that I worked for were actually kind of unlike the typical, maybe special operations stereotype you see on TV or in the movies, loud, obnoxious, in your face. Those were the guys that kind of threw me off, because that's my nature. I'm pretty quiet, pretty stoic, most people would say, and so I really was attracted to the guys who were the quiet professionals and lived the life that everybody preached at the time there to just do your job. And that's really kind of what attracted me to SEALs was the opportunity to do some cool stuff, but do it so that nobody would know you're even there or around. So the best things I got from the guys I worked for was, be able to make a decision because the guys want it. You, a leader that can make a decision. They don't want somebody who waffles. Listen to my guys. That was something that was preached. Day one of SEAL training was the instructors were really preaching to the officers in the class to trust your men, bring them into the planning process, and they have a lot of experience. You were foolish if you thought you knew it all and didn't seek their advice or their guidance as you went along. And then the best is just treat people like you would want to treat themselves, like somebody would want to treat you. And I think that was really good for me. I learned a lot of that from coaching, and I tried to apply those same principles when I was a leader in the SEALs.
Yeah, those are definitely some cornerstone principles, right? And you hear them coming up over and over again. That's why they're just cornerstoners, epically crucial to be a great leader. Now, the military gives us a lot of different experience, like you and I know. A lot of different lessons that we learn along our ways, right? And I do have a number of military listeners out here actually listening to this podcast. So what is your best advice for them as they get closer to the end of their careers? What's the best advice you got for those people in taking all these lessons that you learned from your military service and bringing that into the real world?
Well, it's just one of those, I don't know what they do in the Canadian military, but our transition programs, they kind of tell you to about 2 years out, start thinking about what you want to do. And I didn't follow that. So I was about 6 months out when I started realizing that when I finally got my orders, my retirement orders, and I'm like, wow, this is for real. So you had to start thinking about that. But, start looking for, definitely looking for areas that interest you and that you can apply your, what you learned in the military. And so my goal when I got out was to go and do things unique and challenging in my retired life. And so I kind of chose this public speaking route and then writing the book. And so it was all things I never thought I would do. And so if you're up for that, which is hard, as you well know, in this kind of line of work, there's thousands of experts out there doing the same thing. And so you got to find your niche, you got to find your message. And then if you believe in it, you just got to keep working hard and doing it. And that's what I've been doing. But what I find when I talk and meet with corporate and business leaders, it's everything. Business or leadership is all the same. It's just different terminology or how you apply it, and a lot of what you do in the military easily goes over to what you can do in the business world. And they like your discipline. And so when, I tell my SEAL stories because it's kind of an unconventional way of leadership, but when you really break it all down, it's the same thing, And so that's kind of what I do. But I guess the best thing, like I said, is 2 years out, start looking for it, find something you really like, and just go for it. And don't let everybody tell you no.
That's a great segue, finding your niche and going after it, because yours has definitely been in this realm of humility as a leadership cornerstone. You have the book, The Leadership Killer, which is all about what I call here at Moving Forward Leadership, the boss. So I have the boss, and the goal is to turn bosses into leaders. And you've basically framed it around the leadership killer. And the whole premise of the book is humility is crucially important as a leader. So where did this humility aspect come from? Why is it so important to leaders? Where did it come from for you?
Humility?
Yeah.
Well, like I say in the book, it was a hard lesson learned, and on my own part, my own hubristic story. I unfortunately had everything I was doing well, and I was unfortunately passed over twice for promotion, and so I had to get out of the Navy, not much to my chagrin. And so I fought real hard to get back in. Some things that had happened administratively, long story, but somebody had messed with my official record that I did not know about, and I did not discover until after I got out. So I was able to use that and some other things to get back on active duty, and because that's what I really want to do. I had done 13 years and they're kicking me out, and I said, I got so much more to offer, and so I fought really hard to get back in because I had some unfinished business. And so once I corrected my record and got promoted, I took the opportunity to go back and try to get back on active duty. And so that's what I did. And so my own story it's the book, my chapters are about my own story, how I was at my peak, super cocky, thought I knew it all, super hubristic. And then I got bit hard and humbled hard. And so the time out, about 2 years I was out of the service, I stayed in the reserves. That kind of fed my passion to get back in. I miss the guys. I miss hanging out with the guys more than anything, and so just that passion to get back in and it humbled me and made me a better leader and made me a better person, because I was getting a little cocky there, and probably, as my mom would say, a little bit too big for my britches, and and I learned the hard way. So that's basically what the book was all about, my story. And then Bill and I, my co-author Bill Treasure, I do a lot of talking in support of his seminars for Giant Leap Consulting. And we would talk almost weekly on, we see an article or something on the news about some leader who did something unprofessional or bad, and you knew it was wrong. And so we would talk about it. And Bill has a lot of experience in the corporate side of the house, and with the military, he just decided, hey, I want to write a 5th book. What do you think about co-authoring? And I said, great. So that was kind of the genesis behind the book and why we did it and why. And we finally whittled it down. We had talked about a lot about different aspects of bad leaders and what we thought were bad leaders and who we've worked for. But it all kind of came back to hubris, and as I think, and Bill probably would agree, that we think hubris is the root of all the evil, and all the other bad leadership traits kind of branch off from hubris. And so that's why we focused on that topic and felt it was a relevant subject for right now. So that's the story behind the story.
In the book, you guys have 2 characters in there, which I found kind of interesting. You refer to them as the killer and General Hubris. So let's dive into these 2 cats a little bit deeper, shall we? So who is the killer? What are they about? And as well as the general.
Well, I think hubris. It's a fine line to me. The killer is the one where the leader just thinks they know it all, and they think they can not follow their own guidance and do what I say, not what I do. They think they can do things because people won't report them, and so it becomes more about them and not about the unit, the command, or the mission. And so they lose focus on why they're in charge and what they're doing, and like I said, it all becomes about them, and they do things for the betterment of themselves and not for the folks that work for them. So that's kind of the bad hubris. The general one is that's a good one. I haven't thought about that in a long time. So that's a good question, Scott. I don't know, general hubris. I think there's a fine line between being confident because as a leader, you want to be confident. You want to be, and the men, at least the folks that I worked with in special ops, they want a confident leader. They want somebody to make a decision have their best interests, know that you're going to be out front leading them, and they have confidence in you, and you in return have confidence in them. And I think maybe that's more kind of the general hubris side of the house. Is you have to have a little bit of hubris to be a successful leader, but you have to know when it's getting out of hand.
Yeah, I definitely took them as the killers. Definitely that narcissistic asshole boss that doesn't care about anything but themselves. But the general hubris is more along the lines of, yeah, you're a good person, but all of a sudden you're getting successful, you're starting to knock all down all these goals and stuff like this, getting recognized, getting noticed, and your ego just swells and swells and swells, and then you don't realize it. The journal didn't realize it until the point of, failure. And you guys talk about that in your book of so many examples that you put in there, real life examples of CEOs and athletes and all these other people hit their pinnacle, and it all comes crashing down in front of them because they didn't keep their ego in check. So I guess my follow-on question with that, just to keep running with this theme, is how can leaders ensure their ego doesn't grow too much when they're being successful, when they're being recognized as this great leader and doing all these good things for an organization, hitting that pinnacle? What can they do to make sure they don't hit that stumbling point and all of a sudden see themselves just crashing to the ground?
I thought what was really important we did in the Navy, and I saw it in the other services, was when I became a commanding officer, I had an XO, my number 2, and then I had my command master chief or senior enlisted. And, we called it the triad of leadership. And I always relied heavily on them to kind of call me out if I was stepping over the line or trying to put a policy decision that didn't make sense. And I saw that work very well in the Navy, and I always liked that. So Bill and I kind of mentioned, have a check, have somebody that you can trust, that you can call you out when you're getting out of hand, and give you good advice, to kind of prevent you from getting, your head swelling and getting too big. So if you can find that check, it's very important to, as a leader, my feeling, to keep you humble, but it's still effective.
Sometimes you have goals, but you know what? You have a hard time reaching them. And you just can't figure out why. Why is it that you can't achieve those things that you want to achieve? Maybe it's dedication. Maybe it's motivation. Maybe you haven't picked the right goals. So this is where I was not too long ago. And then I realized something. I've been developing the Power Goals program my entire life. And here it is now for you, where you can learn how to pick the right goals, figure out how to achieve those goals, how to stay on track, but most importantly, how to get back on track when you get off. So are you ready? Are ready to up your game and achieve those things that you've been meaning to achieve for so long now? Simply go to movingforleadership.com/power and learn more about the Power Goals program and achieve everything that you've been wanting to achieve. And now, back to the show. Yeah, I definitely like that. I've employed that personally myself in the past when I was a company commander. So I was in command of 200 folks. My 2IC, my second in command, same thing as XO. And my squadron sergeant major, same thing as, same type of position as what you guys have. Those two guys can walk in my office anytime, shut the door, say, W2F boss, what are you thinking? Right?
Yeah,
and it happens. It happens. Even myself, like I was podcasting back in those days. I was still learning all this stuff from all these great guests. And it still happened of people walking in, shutting the door and saying, what the hell are you doing? What are you thinking? And sometimes you get the blinders on. You don't know what you don't know. You didn't check your blind spot. Pick an analogy. But you need these folks, right? These guys and girls to be able to walk in, knowingly that you got their back for them basically jacking you up.
Yeah. It was very, it was real important that you had that, but it was also very important that once you opened the door, you came out as a unified voice. And so that was very important in front of the sailors or the troops that the top three were talking the same message, and so while they're checking you, you are driving command policy, making sure everything's working towards the goal, the mission, and you got to be talking on the same sheet of music because you don't want to confuse the sailors or the troops. And so have the check, talk it out, come out in one unified voice. I think that works really well.
Absolutely. This is one of those times that has to be done behind closed doors, right? Away from everybody else, because those people who are, your check or whatever, regardless where they sit in an organization, maybe they're not your right-hand men, for example. Sometimes it could be someone from the ground that you just happen to trust, right? That you will be able to enable them to come in and do that to you. But it's got to be behind closed doors. It can't be public, so that, like you said, it's a unified voice that comes out at the end.
Yeah, it was important for us. One of the hard things we had, being unconventional, so to speak, is somebody on the conventional side of the house that you could talk to that could help you understand that, because we rely so much on the conventional side of the house for our logistics and movement and stuff like that. But, one of the biggest leadership things I always had was, one of the most intimidating things was walking into a platoon space full of SEALs, and they'll humble you very quickly. And so hopefully they do it behind closed doors and not public. But when you're a young junior officer, I'm sure you found the same thing. You walk into a room with experienced folks, you're crazy if you think you know it all. And, and there were many times they would call me out. So it was good stuff. But I think like I said, the bottom line, along as you go, have a check, somebody you trust that can call you out when you're getting out of hand.
Awesome. One of the other concepts you have in the book is that leadership starts from the bottom. And that's something that you wouldn't necessarily hear from many people. So definitely want to get your thoughts on this, your rationale behind that. Most people think leadership and they think the top of an organization, but you guys are talking about it starting from the bottom. So can you explain that to us?
Well, a little bit. I mean, Bill likes to think, as a leader, your job is to develop future leaders. So you have to try to identify those folks as soon as possible, and they're down at the bottom, and so you're always looking for a new talent to come up and probably ultimately replace you. But I always felt that, when I was one of my first big leadership positions, I was overseas at a special boat unit in Panama, and I kept hearing, I don't know how they do in the Canadian military, but Fridays was a field day. And so we would go around and clean the spaces, or the command would clean the spaces. And then the XO would walk around and check for cleanliness and stuff. And I would, every now and then when I first got down there, all I kept hearing was leadership doesn't know what's going on around the command. And I used to say that when I was a young JO. And then all of a sudden I was in a leadership and I'm going, and they're talking about me now. So, what am I missing? What am I not getting? And so I made it a point. And the best thing I ever did as a leader was to do these walkabouts every Friday when I was in town. And I would go down and, yes, under the umbrella, I was going to check the command cleanliness. But in reality, what I did was I went down to meet my people, my sailors, folks doing the work. And I'd call walk the deck plates. And I took it as an opportunity to just talk to them, meet them, learn from them, see what they were thinking. And it was very awkward and a little uncomfortable at first, but I made it a point and made a commitment that I was going to do it all the time when I was not on travel or leave. And so after a period of time, the sailors knew that on Friday, here comes the XO, and this was their opportunity to directly talk to leadership. And so what I what I learned from it is I got my best ideas and best gouge, so to speak, was from the sailors when I walked the deck plates and did my walkabouts. And so I tried to get as much as I could, and learned an awful lot, reinforced some things that I had already known. But it was a great opportunity for me to share, hey, this is what the commanding officer wants to do. This is why we're doing it. Get feedback from them, and then hear anything they had that maybe I wasn't getting up the chain, so to speak, because stuff gets filtered, as you well know, through as it goes up the chain of command. So you always don't get the unabridged story. So it was a great opportunity. So that's where I think leadership starts at the very beginning, because I got great information and great knowledge from my sailors, the most junior ones, because they don't know any better. They'll tell you straight up what's wrong, and sometimes I had to check myself, but it was good. It was all good, and so that's kind of what we meant by starting at the bottom.
I often say you can't lead from behind a desk, right? You need to get out. You need to walk around, walk the lines. We like to refer to it as up here, but it's the exact same, same thing, right? Get out, see your people at the ground level, walk around, talk to them as a person, one-on-one person. And as you slowly build that trust with them, they understand, they see you as an actual individual. They'll start bringing your problems to you, and they'll start informing you of things, what's going right, what's not going right. One time I got informed of a training program that got shut down that never even reached me. I'm like, well, I'm the one that approves that or just doesn't approve of those things. So I never even heard of this. And from the ground level was, well, apparently it didn't get approved. So went back and looked into it. And lo and behold, we were doing that training 5 weeks later. So it's so crucial. You can't lead from the desk. And it blows my mind, the show, as much as I actually like it, I hate it at the same time, is that Undercover Boss, where CEOs from big corporations go undercover as employees in their own company and basically start doing jobs and stuff. Like, why does it take a TV show for you to get out and walk around and see your people? It shouldn't.
Yeah,
you got to do that.
Well, you got to do it. It's a huge commitment, because walkabouts could take 2 to 3 hours, And so, like most XOs, a lot of people waiting to talk to me. I got my inbox is stacked 6 feet high with, all the administrative work for the command. But you got to do it. You got to push away, and that's the only way you learn. It's, I think you're foolish. That's kind of one sign of hubris, is you think you know it all from your higher echelon, your office, and then you're really kind of fooling yourself that you don't really have the big picture. So.
No, absolutely. So one of the final things I like to talk about is you guys talk about a chapter, you and Bill talk about a chapter of living leadership. So how can leaders go about, what are some of the best ways that leaders can live leadership on a daily basis?
Well, you have to remember, one thing I learned very quickly is leadership is lonely, and so you have to remember that you're on a pedestal, and when you're in front of the sailors or the troops, spotlight is on you. And so every act that you do, everything you say, they're listening to, they're watching. And so you always got to remind yourself that you are always on, in that spotlight, and, to act professionally. I always thought the best leaders were the ones that, set policy, lived by that policy, and didn't differentiate at all, and I respected those guys the most, and ladies that I work for. You just have to live. You got to live professionally. You have to set the standard for the command, the business, the organization, and so that's my definition. Bill will probably give you a little bit more, but I just think you're the person everybody looks to and listens to, and you set the standards, and you have to live by those standards. You can't differentiate when it's convenient for you and expect everybody else to follow something different, especially when you're in charge and you are setting policy and guidance out for everyone to follow.
The adherence to the standards, I definitely think is crucial. You can't be wishy-washy, right? You can't show up one day and be like, oh, we're going to do this today, and we're going to do it every day. And then the next day you show up like, I don't really feel like it today. You know what? I'm going to take a break, but the rest of you guys, you still have to follow it. You got to live, like you said, you got to live to that standard you set out that you expect from your subordinates. And especially, in fact, I would say you have to even live to a higher standard than what you expect from them, because like you said, you're a leader. The spotlight is always on you, and whatever mistake you make, it gets magnified by a bazillion times.
Yeah. You're always in the spotlight. That's about the best. I can't say any clearer, I guess, to me. When you're in charge of everything, and everybody is watching you and listening to you, and so you got to live according to what your policies and your guidance you put out for everybody else. So, yep.
Awesome, John. I thoroughly enjoyed the show. We're gonna start to wind down here, but before we wrap up, we got a last couple questions for you.
Okay.
And the first one is one I ask all my guests here at Moving Forward Leadership, and that is, according to you, John Havlik, what makes a great leader?
I often said the best leaders are the ones that can make a decision, the ones that are consistent in their leadership style, whether, if you come in hard, then stay hard. If you're going to be soft, stay soft, Don't try to waffle, be hard one day, like you said, and soft. So, make a decision, be consistent. And one thing we learn as SEALs, it's always about the mission. It's not about the individual. So if you can follow that and pass that on to your sailors and troops, works out pretty well. And stay humble.
Awesome. Final thing is, where can people find you? How can they follow you? Where can they get the book? Feel free to give yourself a shameless plug. It's all about you right now.
Well, I got a website, www.coachhavlik.com. I have LinkedIn, John Havlik, Twitter @Coach Havlik. The book is on leadershipkiller.com. You can go to that website and order it. We just released it on Audible, so it's available there. I do a lot of work, like I said, for my co-author, Bill Treasure, at Giant Leap Consulting. So you can go to giantleapconsulting.com there. And but the website is probably the best way to get a hold of me. There's a whole page where you can, with my contact information, and if you like my sea stories, you want to hear more, always willing to share. So appreciate the opportunity to get that out there.
Awesome. For the audience, as always, it's easy. Go to movingforwardleadership.com/108, and all the links are in the show notes for you guys. John, it's been a pleasure. Before we wrap up here, I'm going to give your book a plug, because you know what? I've gone through a copy and it's great. It's super. It's not super thick. It's only about 150 pages, or no, not even 120 pages. But I love these books, the ones that are like 100 pages, 120 pages, because there's no fluff in there for the listener. There's no fluff. It's all solid advice, actionable tips in there that you can implement right now. A lot of people think these big books, these 250, 300, 400 page books, novels on leadership are the ones to go, because the people believe that they have the most knowledge in them. I totally disagree. The smaller ones are actually the best ones, because they're focused, they're sharp, to give you the advice that you need. And that's exactly what you're going to get out of the Leadership Killer. So there's a plug for you directly for me. And no, I was not paid to do that.
Thank you. That kind of, Bill and my intent with the book was to be brief and brilliant, so to speak, but offer a tool that, a leader can just have right there as a ready reference in case, and make it quick. Yeah. So thank you very much for the plug. I appreciate it.
I would say your intent, one shot downrange, bullseye, done.
Thank you.
John, again, thanks for coming out. Thanks for talking to me. Most importantly, thanks for talking to the listener there.
Thanks, Scott. I appreciate it. Have a great day. Thank you.
All right, that's all I got for you fine folks today. I hope you enjoyed the show. I hope you enjoyed the interview. And most importantly, I hope you got something out of it. And if you did, remember, R squared, S squared, right? Rate and review the show so that it gets a little bit noticed, a bit more. But most importantly, I can help more people because that's what I'm here for. That's what my guests are here for, is to help more people become better leaders and not being bosses, right? So remember that. R squared, rate and review. S, share the show. Share this show with someone who you think can relate to the podcast as a whole and today's topic. And then finally, subscribe. Subscribe so that you never miss another episode. And you can do that via your podcast playing app of choice through movingforwardleadership.com/subscribe. That's it for today, ladies and gentlemen. And as always, stop bossing and start leading. Take care now.